We got to a point where one of the women said, facts are opinions, everything is subjective. And yet Brett Cooper attacked Fresh and Fit, not the women that constantly go on those podcasts. Now we see her here saying this is a shared problem. No, the degenerate femininity of women is not a shared problem. I agree with 90% of Brett Cooper's positions and what she has to say. Last time I said 98%, but then I saw her kind of emotionally slander Fresh and Fit out of ignorance or an unwillingness to thoroughly analyze the problem. Here, I came across a video that she recorded in response to women getting upset that Charlie Kirk, well, I'll just show you the video that Charlie Kirk said that got women extremely triggered.
We've basically told a great generation of young women, don't get married, don't have kids, go get a corporate job, and it's created mass political hysteria. The boys don't want to date me anymore because they're not at their prime, and people get mad when I say that. Well, it's just true. If you're in your early 30s, I'm sorry, it's like you're not as attractive in the dating pool as you were in the early 20s.
He made a lot of...
This caused a widespread meltdown among feminists on Twitter, which is obviously no surprise, and Brett Cooper essentially calls that out. If you want to watch the entire Brett Cooper video, go ahead and do that. I'm going to show you a couple moments where I think that we see the reason why women are not able to fully grasp the problem of degenerate feminism. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Unfortunately, this does echo the last video that I recorded on Brett Cooper, where she said that men should not listen to Fresh and Fit and accused them of having positions that they don't have at all. Then we saw a couple days later, Ben Shapiro recorded a video doing basically the same thing to Andrew Tate. So there's clearly an agenda going on at the Daily Wire. And I feel like we're piecing together clues here about what's actually going on. Again, I emphasize that the resentment feminism has for masculinity is the same resentment Marxism has for objective reality.
Lost their damn minds. Somebody said, it's funny to me that there is a male loneliness epidemic, but they want to so badly project their undesirability onto women. I mean, yeah.
It's very unfortunate and honestly heartbreaking to see so many women on Twitter just not being able to interface with reality. I'm not talking about Brett Cooper here. I'm talking about some of the comments that she reads. If you watch this video, it is truly unfortunate to see how many women have had their psyches completely ravaged and destroyed by resenting masculinity, which is the apparatus for which a woman interfaces with the objective world without finding it oppressive and too much to bear. Any woman getting upset with Charlie Kirk's factual statements is obviously exhibiting that kind of disability.
Yeah, but there is a male loneliness epidemic and a female girl boss epidemic. There's also the epidemic of men leaving the dating pool, which doesn't help the good women who are actually trying to find someone to get married, who get lumped in with all the feminists. It's a mess.
Right, so here we see Brett Cooper trying to play both sides, though, because of what she says in a moment.
The whole thing is a mess.
So she says the whole thing's a mess, and she says there's the male loneliness epidemic and also women being degenerate, but then listen to what she says.
You can stop pointing fingers.
This is what's wrong. No, that's not correct. We can point fingers, and we can, actually we have the necessity to point fingers exactly where it's necessary to pinpoint who's doing what incorrectly. For instance, it's very obvious to see that all the people losing their minds, frothing at the mouth, experiencing a mental breakdown at the objective facts Charlie Kirk stated are all women, and they are all feminists that are unable to interface with reality. This is exactly what Fresh and Fit talk about, and exactly what Fresh and Fit demonstrate on the show repeatedly. To just say both men and women have problems does not actually better the situation in any way and does not help anyone overcome the current situation.
Because it is not a man or woman or black and white situation.
It is actually completely a black and white situation. The problems that men are creating are black and white, and the problems women are creating are also black and white. There is not an equal amount of responsibility distributed along the analysis of any of the given flaws. And the probability of that being the case is infinitesimally small. In fact, it's asymptotically approaching zero, that probability. This is a typical female error of, oh, we are all equally guilty, we're all in this together, there's a problem, but we all have to, oh, we're not going to point fingers. No, we will point fingers because that's how we fix the problem. Fresh and Fit demonstrate repeatedly in the last video, no, 2 videos I recorded ago, a woman on Fresh and Fit saying facts were opinions. Men and women are not suffering from the same problems. They are not creating the same problems. There is a glorification of female degeneracy going on in the culture as a result of masculinity, which is really just a sophisticated embodiment of objective reality being demonized, because objective reality judges women very harshly. It judges anybody very harshly that denies reality, and currently women are incentivized to deny reality both politically and in alignment with the ideology of feminism, the doctrine of feminism. What's weird is I see the same type of error she just committed here being the same error she committed with Fresh and Fit, where she played a clip of Fresh and Fit and then agreed with them, and here she posted clips of women saying things that are blatantly the opposite of reality, charged with degenerate anti-reality emotion, and then said it's both men and women's problem. No, that's a woman problem. Women in feminism are demonizing masculinity, and that's the reason they write incoherent things that are designed to be the opposite of reality, because they think that if they spite reality, then they're somehow winning. It's like, what's the saying? You spite your nose to injure your face or whatever. That same principle feminism tries to teach women to apply to the world, where it says, in order to resist the patriarchy, in order to resist all the toxic forces, you must demonize men. Go into your 30s, go into your 40s, be a boss queen, be single, you don't need a man. You'll really show them. But in fact, women just pay the brunt of the price. And in all of the comments Brett Cooper shows in this video, women fail to recognize that. And she fails to recognize the own degeneracy that she's analyzing. Let me show you examples of comments Brett Cooper reads and still fails to recognize as a feminine degeneracy problem. To be honest here, this is on her behalf, low resolution analysis. Just reading comments and then leaving it up to the audience to understand why exactly it's incorrect that's not analysis. Explaining what the problem is, the architecture of the problem, who has the problem, and how it's fixed is actual analysis.
That's just the truth. Another woman commented and said women in their 30s and 40s are in their sexual prime.
So you see women, okay, that woman is denying reality. She didn't explain why that woman's denying reality.
Bigotry and misogyny to make all the underachieving white men and incels feel a perverse sense of justification.
So this is the type of tweet that, the cognitively destroyed, mentally broken women on Twitter will constantly tweet. It's kind of an animalistic, instinctual response to having reality enter their sphere of delusion where, they walk outside and they get reminded that masculinity judges them and is impressive and is immutable and they can't do anything about it because a Ferrari drives past them and it makes a loud noise, and they get reminded that men like fast cars. Or they go to the gym and they see that men are massively larger than women and much stronger than them, and then their feminist ethos gets broken because they get reminded that men and women aren't physically identical, and then they get reminded everything's not socially constructed. What I'm saying here is that this is the type of response degenerate feminists have to reality when they get reminded reality exists. But Brett Cooper doesn't acknowledge that that's what's going on here, that these women are broken as a result of feminism and they can't actually stand reality. She says this is a shared problem men and women have. No, this is a degenerate female problem. Men are actually winning as a result of this, because all this does, the more insane women become, it just puts more power into the hands of the men at the end of the distribution. They have ultimate leverage because they can select for any woman that they want. Because these women are spiting their nose to hurt their face, they actually don't have a future. They're sacrificing themselves on the altar of their own resentment. Again, I think Brett Cooper would agree with 90% of what I'm saying at least. But for some reason, and I think it may be because she's a woman, she has not acknowledged this. Or there's some sort of emotional component to this that she isn't acknowledging because, again, we saw the same thing happen with Fresh and Fit. She demonized men for having on women that proved to the world every single show how delusional women are, and she attacked Fresh and Fit, not the women that go on their show. That's mentally inadequate. That's a failure. A couple days ago, they had an entire panel of boss queens that was so outlandish, so disgusting, so just honestly the opposite of civilized, which goes into a realm I can't really talk about on YouTube, that it was a wonder they managed to exist in civilization at all. We got to a point where one of the women said, facts are opinions, everything is subjective. And yet Brett Cooper attacked Fresh and Fit, not the women that constantly go on those podcasts. Now we see her here saying this is a shared problem. No, the degenerate femininity of women is not a shared problem. It is specifically a female problem. The longer women demonize masculinity, the more they will be punished by reality, their biology, and the ensuing mental brokenness that comes as not being able to interface with masculinity.
That is not what Charlie Kirk was doing. Another person commented and said, you misspelled incel tries to justify why women won't socially interact with him. And a lot of these comments bothered me because obviously you can find fault with what Charlie Kirk says.
Incorrect response. Charlie Kirk is completely correct, literally speaking. Everything he said is correct. You cannot find fault with what he said.
Can have different experiences. If you're a woman in your 30s,
your experience. Okay, again, the typical female line, your experiences define what reality is. No, they don't. They literally don't. You could have any experience in the world, and Charlie Kirk's statements would still be objectively true. Again, maybe this is just a female way of communicating that she's doing here. But there is a pattern when she demonizes Fresh and Fit for no articulatable reason, fails to recognize their mission in terms of helping men, or exposing the degeneracy that she is hypothetically confronting in this video. Then she reads those very statements of degeneracy on her show and says men and women share responsibility. No, we don't.
Married and had kids later and you're totally happy. I know many women like that. It is totally fine.
No, it is not totally fine. That is a massive problem. You said that, Brett, because on the statistical distribution, if women did that in mass, there would be massive problems for women. Women run into countless psychological issues and as well as biological issues in terms of bearing the kids if they have children later. So saying it's okay to have kids when you're older is a cop-out. No, it's not. Be brave and just say the truth. Say what Charlie Kirk said. It is worse to have kids when you're older. Again, that's a fact. It is very female tendency to try to play both sides. So, oh, you don't have to be mad at me. I don't want to create a problem because then it'd be uncomfortable when you have to confront it. No, who cares if people get upset? Say what the truth is like Charlie Kirk did.
My problem with these comments is that they're all ad hominem attacks. They're calling him an incel. They're attacking his forehead, his looks, like nothing that is productive to this conversation whatsoever.
Okay, so we have a recognition of the degeneracy, but not an acknowledgement as to why it's happening, the architecture for it, and that women bear the sole responsibility for it. Because again, she said that men and women share responsibility. But this video's not over because there are other moments in this video that I didn't like.
I mean, it did come off a bit harsh, a bit arrogant, in my opinion, especially because he married his wife,
No, it did not come across as arrogant. Are you kidding me? How is stating objective facts arrogant? Brett, you're deteriorating your position every single time you talk about intersexual dynamics. Obviously, this is the reason why nobody listens to women in the intersexual dynamic space, with maybe the exception of Pearl. But women aren't really incentivized to understand the seriousness, the existential threat to civilization of the problem that we're facing. We have women that are saying objective reality is untenable and oppressive because masculinity is untenable and oppressive. We have women saying that facts are subjective. We have women saying the opposite of reality just to spite reality and sacrifice their life on the altar of their resentment stemming from Marxism.
Beautiful.
Charlie Kirk was not arrogant and he was not harsh.
Stunning wife when she was 31 years old, and they had their daughter a year later. Obviously, he does not believe that women older than 30 are beyond their prime because he married one of them, and she...
That is not true. He did literally say that women in their 30s are beyond their prime. What are you talking about? You just played a video of him saying literally that. So that's not true. You just lied. Why would you do that, Brett?
He is lovely. But of course, we also have to note that he was not talking about every single individual woman. He was not talking about their goodness or their wisdom that they gain with age.
See, you see the feminine perspective here. Oh, we have to acknowledge that he wasn't talking about your character and your internal feelings and your worth as a human being on this earth and your spiritual journey. Why do you have to say any of that? His statement was very clear. I understand she could be trying to reach women that, have the destroyed female psyche, but the correct thing to do is to just say you are destroying your life.
Age or their personality or even their sex appeal to men, because a lot of guys like older women. Have you...
No, that's not correct.
About every single individual woman. He was not talking about their goodness or their wisdom that they...
Do not provide feminists an out for saying some men find older women attractive. That is ignorant of the statistical realities and the realities of the distribution. By far, your average 24-year-old is going to be universally more attractive to all men than a 34-year-old. I understand maybe men enjoy thinking in terms of probabilities and objective reality and statistics more than women do. But she backtracks every single time she starts to say something that would lead to accountability towards women. And you know what's interesting? Something just came back to me. She scoffed and smirked and laughed when Myron said, we have to hold women accountable using our actions.
The reason why it's so bad, guys, is that in 2023, we don't hold women accountable for their promiscuity anymore. Right?
Why is she looking at him like that, as if what he's saying is ridiculous? Doesn't make sense. Watch that again.
23, we don't hold women accountable for their promiscuity anymore. Right? So...
Something funny about what he just said? You remember that? It's in my video. You go check it out. She smirked and laughed. Women have a problem looking at accountability. As a matter of fact, to many women, the idea of accountability is either a joke or it's oppression. I'm being completely serious. Think about what I'm saying here. It's either a joke or it's oppression, because they never have to contend with objective reality anyway. So therefore, and contending with objective reality is what dealing with consequences and accountability are. So when you say I'm going to enforce consequences on a woman for her choices, she just thinks, oh my gosh, isn't this cringe? Isn't this funny? He wants me to contend with reality. Oh my gosh, this is oppression. And then we see somebody supposedly based laughing and scoffing at a clip of Myron saying things she should completely agree with, but for some reason doesn't.
Gain with age or their personality or even their sex appeal to men, because a lot of guys like older women. Have you
What do you mean? It's so nebulous. What do you mean a lot? You mean if you take the total number out of the... See, this is how I think about it. It's like if you take the total number of the distribution, if you take like 1% of that, it's still 10 million men. Are you going to say that, okay, that's a lot because 10 million men is a lot? No, it's still not a lot if you take the total distribution. So this statement is nebulous. It means nothing. On average, men do not find women that are 34 years old more attractive than women who are 24 years old. This is a lie to cope with what Charlie Kirk literally said. What all this is proving is that women, even women that are supposedly based, cannot literally cope with objective reality in the same way men can. And it's really, really, really unlucky.
Watch The Graduate. Anyway, he was talking about when women are in their biological prime. And I'm sorry, but that is, in fact, when we are younger. Your 30s and your 40s are not a woman's childbearing years.
So it's so funny to see her acknowledge reality and then go back and forth. We have to play both sides in order to, appease people. We don't have to appease anybody. We can militantly stand by the truth and be righteous in the truth because the truth justifies anything. A word of truth outweighs the world. That's my position, and that's the position of any man who understands the objective aspects of reality. Word of truth outweighs the world.
A recent post on Twitter said, fact, women lose 90% of their eggs by age 30 and 97% of their eggs by 40. A 22-year-old is less fertile now.
I'm literally watching an emotional person try to understand objective truth
than her grandmother was at 35. That is the shocking one to me. And I think that is a consequence of the medicine we take, the food that we eat, the toxins in our lives. We can talk about that later. She goes on and she says, and less fertile now than her grandmother was at 35. That is the shocking one to me. And
I think there are probably psychological reasons as well that are not as studied because the technology just isn't as advanced, but your mental state can completely impact your physiology.
I think that is a consequence of the medicine we take, the food that we eat, the toxins in the sperm men do have are deformed in shape and mobility, carry faulty genetic material causing miscarriage. Hard facts. Now plan accordingly. Have a family early, learn to select so you can...
Even with this woman in her tweet, she blames miscarriages in old women to men's sperm. Again, completely ignoring the probabilistic distribution. No, the main reason a woman has a miscarriage is because she's 39. If she's 39 and has a miscarriage, it's because she's 39. It's not the man's fault. What are you even talking about? A man can have children when he's 70 years old.
Rule out, then rule in, and stop the endocrine disruption as much as you can. And that last line about being selective is so important, but we will touch on that later in the episode. But these are all cold, hard, real facts. They're not fun facts, but they're real. And we need to know.
Facts don't have to be fun.
Greens and rough greens. One woman said, he is talking statistically about a woman's reproductive prime, and he's correct. There are many primes in life. You are not in your reproductive prime anymore in your 30s. Somebody else said common sense hurts your feelings. He's right. And Candace jumped in and made it a bit broader, saying...
So here we see another tweet by a woman that, again, tries to play both sides because she says it doesn't make a woman less worthy. What does that even mean? It literally does mean they are less worthy of marriage if they're older. By definition, if they are less, it's like, think of it for a job application. If you are less suited for the job because you have less of the qualifications, because you're older and are not as attractive as you were, when you were 24, you are literally less worthy for the job. We use these emotional terms for women when in reality we should just have them not demonizing masculinity so that they don't have a problem with objective reality.
Especially if having a family is more important than having a corporate title to women. And I completely agree with all of that. And that is something that men...
No, that's not correct. You are less worthy of a marriage if you're 39. You are less worthy of a marriage if you're 35 and have 3 kids and you've been divorced twice. You're less deserving of a marriage if you're just a bad person. You're less deserving of a marriage if you're that lady from Forrest Gump who manages to come back and try to date a billionaire like years later after getting AIDS. There are lots of things that can make you less worthy for marriage. Charlie Kirk is objectively correct, and we are seeing women just struggling to cope with this. Even the ones that are coming to his defense are being unnecessarily emotional.
Should be considering as they begin dating a woman if they want to have a family. And these are things that women should be considering as they determine their priorities early in life.
They are not considering them symmetrically. They are considering them asymmetrically, though, Brett, because men, when selecting for a woman, are looking to disqualify her based on variables like she's old and already has kids. Whereas it's a woman's job to not be disqualified based on those things. In the same way, it's a man's job not to be disqualified on variables such as, being a loser, not being able to provide, not being emotionally stable, etc.
Begin dating a woman if they want to have... And I completely agree with all of that. And that is something that men should be considering.
So no, it is not something that men and women should both simply be considering. That's not high resolution enough. Women have a duty and an impetus to do and act differently than men in light of this information, especially in light of the degeneracy that they are propagating as a result of adhering to feminism.
As they begin dating a woman if they want to have a family. And these are things that women should be considering as they determine their priorities early in life.
There's always this thing of, but both sides are equal. This is actually a denial of reality. I want to make that clear and I'm not singling Brett out for this. This is, whenever anybody does this, it is literally not the case, because the situations where something is 50-50 is almost never the case. If you were to look at who's at fault in a given situation, it's most of the time like 70-30, it could be 72-18, 63-37, etc. You get the idea. It's almost never 50-50. And when we're talking about matters as complex and intricate and sophisticated as gender psychology and the gender dynamics of what men and women have to go through, by mere fact of men and women having to deal with different problems that don't even add up to the same sums, if you will, the responsibility to deal with a certain problem is almost never going to be equal. As a matter of fact, it's almost always going to be more like 90-10 or 90-10. An easy example is a woman's promiscuity. A man has no control over that. It is a woman's job 100% to control who she sleeps with. Conversely, it is not a woman's job to be able to make sure the man can provide. That is 100% the man's responsibility. Charlie Kirk has identified an area where women are monumentally and epically failing as a result of their proclivity to be taken advantage of by the psychopathology of degenerate leftist politics. That is not men's job to fix. Stop demonizing masculinity, feminists, or have your lives ruined and wrecked while you get replaced by young women, including young women from other countries. As you take antidepressants, single and childless in your 40s and 50s, coping and complaining, demonizing masculinity for all the ways that you're insufficient.
Currently, right now, if they're entering their 30s. These are things we all have to be thinking about. Now, does this mean that you will never have children if you're not married by 30 years old? No, of course not. My mom had me when she was in her early 40s. Having children later has become far more commonplace, actually.
That's not acceptable. Telling women that it is acceptable to have women and children in their 40s is not acceptable. That's a terrible message.
Having children later will make it harder, especially if you are looking for a more trad guy, or if you are just starting to settle down and you're dreaming of having many, many children. I spoke to a 35-year-old unmarried female.
Okay, here's another woman. Let's see if we can identify any emotional errors.
Relatively recently. She is seeing someone and they're considering marriage, but says that she is taking it slow. I asked her if she wanted to have children. She said yes. 4. I told her she is too old for taking it slow if she wants 4 children, and at this age, she will be lucky to have a couple after an engagement, a wedding, and a honeymoon period has passed. Not to mention the time it actually takes to grow and birth a child.
Okay, so far this is very base.
Also, not to mention the time that it takes to conceive a child.
I will acknowledge that timelines, math, statistics, reality are all oppressive constructs to feminists.
That is not easy for a lot of people. Back to the post.
Again, that is not men's responsibility, the fact that women are committing that error.
She was stunned. She gasped a little bit and said, wow, you don't mince words, huh? I told her, of course not. People aren't being honest with young women about their bodies and timelines. Has anyone ever told you that your prime childbearing years are over? Has anyone ever talked to you about how aging changes your fertility? She said, no, no one, not one person.
Exactly, because to do that would be to engage in the masculine paradigm, to be oppressive, to be toxic, completely untenable. Reality itself is demonized by feminists. Again, not by men. There is not this equal responsibility men and women share in this domain. Women are denying reality, and men are not denying reality.
And as stupid as it sounds, she hadn't thought about it until I mentioned it. She didn't realize that she didn't have all the time in the world. I don't know if it changed anything for her, but I do think it's a travesty.
I don't know if it changed anything for her, lol.
Something so basic had never been presented to her before. We need to start being blunt with young women. They can make their own choices on their timelines, but it should be done with the most information possible.
Dude, why do they always have to include the emotional error no matter what? She snuck it in the last sentence. They can make their own choices on their timelines, but it should be done with the most information as possible. No, that is not sufficient. It should be their decisions should be the correct ones, not just the ones they want to make. Very strange at the end. But we all have to be accommodating for everybody is the female position no matter what. No, we should not be accommodating of anybody. We should tell women they are making bad choices, and we should make it clear to them, if you make this choice, you are making the wrong choice objectively speaking. They can make their own choices on their timelines as long as they have all the information. That's not sufficient. Becky, I just called her Becky because she sounds like a Becky. It's not actually her name.
Possible. And guys, I feel like all of this just goes back to the fact that women have no idea how their bodies work. We have been lied to.
Stop making excuses. No, that's not true. Whose responsibility is it then? Oh, it's men's fault. It's men's fault women don't know how their body works. Right, we should have explained it to you. What does that even mean? Whose fault is it? The sun gods? Zeus? Pegasus? Who are you talking about? It's literally your fault. It's literally women's fault. What? I'm going to play that again. I didn't even hear that the first time.
But it should be done with the most information possible.
What?
And guys, I feel like all of this just goes back to the fact.
How did she say that?
That women have no idea how their bodies work. We have been lied to.
Lied to? Take responsibility. Bro, take responsibility. Take responsibility. But again, responsibility is oppression. Again, flashback to when Myron said, we have to force women to take responsibility by exercising consequences with our actions. She scoffed and laughed. I think we see why. Women have been lied to.
4, decades at this point. Go on the pill. 20, 30 years. It will have no impact on your fertility. Oh, you don't need to have children. You can have them later in life. It's totally fine.
I think, and I don't care if this is controversial because it's true and I believe it, but it's also objectively true. People know when they're doing the right or the wrong things. I believe that when a woman is sleeping around, she knows that she's literally doing the wrong thing and she just isn't prioritizing reality. I think that when you take like 20 Plan Bs in a month, you know you're doing the wrong thing. Women know when they're doing the wrong thing because humans can almost always tell when they're doing the wrong thing. Yes, it is women's fault for, quote, not understanding their bodies. What are you even talking about?
You can rely on IVF, even though it doesn't work all
Could
the
you
time.
imagine? Okay, I understand that maybe there's like some female emotion going on here, but could you imagine if a man said that? Well, it's not my fault. I don't know how my body works. Like, what would that even mean, bro? What would that even mean, right? That'd be ridiculous.
It is insanely
I've been lied to. What?
expensive.
Dude, people would be mocking him. They'd be like, dude, read the fucking container. You're eating too many calories, you fat fuck. Like, we just make fun of each other, mock each other. Women are like, oh, but my feelings, it's not my fault. Responsibility, that's oppression.
You can just adopt, even though that process is incredibly convoluted and heartbreaking. We have been lied to and we have not been given the proper information. But all of this...
At this point, women have endless information. They get to see the Fresh and Fit podcast. They get to see women making fools of themselves daily and repeatedly getting humiliated, repeatedly going back to get humiliated over and over again because they're told that if they just sacrifice enough of their own integrity and, their life force and their sanity, that they'll become good people in the eyes of this misshapen ideology called feminism, which is Marxism in disguise. But it's a lie. It's not true. But women can see it. They see women ruining their lives. They see men telling them that they're ruining their lives. They see men explaining to them directly, you are ruining your life doing X, Y, and Z. You are doing the wrong thing. As a matter of fact, she started the video with that. She started this video with Charlie Kirk literally saying women are messing up by doing this, and then we're only 7 minutes later. She's saying women have been lied to. Isn't this crazy? You have the information. Women have the information. There's endless amounts of information. There's men going out of their way to explain to women, you're ruining your life. You will be miserable in your 40s and 50s if you are single and childless. Your life will be ruined. You are sacrificing your well-being on the altar of feminism, and then they still do it. They still do it. Do you not have free will? Are we not equal? I thought feminism was all about women having equal autonomy. Oh my gosh, we're so cooked.
Is equipping women with information about their bodies and about the realities of the modern dating landscape so that they can make informed decisions, especially for young women. And I'm not saying go out and just marry the first guy you find because you're scared that you're going to be undesirable, but I do mean don't brush it off and kick it years and years down the road because you've bought it.
Typical thing of playing both sides again. All right.
Guarantee for anyone. I think this woman summed up this balance really well. She said,
balance again. No, there is no balance. Charlie Kirk is literally correct. Women are ruining their lives.
As someone who is getting married in 2 days, I no longer think that we on the right should push get married as soon as possible as a slogan. I agree. Decades of the sexual...
You can't make this up. Did you really just read that out loud? As someone who's getting married in 2 days, I no longer think we on the right should push women to get married as soon as possible. Who does this sound like right now? It sounds like, oh, Brett Cooper. Right. Right after she got married, she started demonizing, slandering Fresh and Fit, the red pill, from a place of emotionality. Very interesting.
Revolution and other negative cultural economic trend lines have produced too many mentally unstable and severely immature young people without the family, church, and community bonds necessary to get them on the right path and keep them there as a guardrail. What that means is that the dating pool of suitably matched partners is super slim, depressingly so. Not to get off...
Whose fault is that? Again, whose fault is that? The dating pool of men has not really changed. As a matter of fact, men are striving more now to become impressive than they ever have been because they see online constantly that in order to have a woman follow your lead, you have to be like hyper successful, rich, masculine, etc. That is completely as a result of the degeneracy women insist on inhabiting. I understand the architecture to the belief that's going on here, and I've accepted that I live in a world where I have to be 10 times more competent than a man had to be in 1950 in order to get a fit, attractive, submissive, feminine woman who wants to be a wife and a mother. I've accepted that. And millions of other young men have accepted that. You know who taught us to accept that? Fresh and Fit, Andrew Tate. You know why they got big and did what they did? Because women were degenerate. Because women were practicing degeneracy and anti-reality worship. Whose fault is it again? There's no equal responsibility. Again, the distribution. The fault of a problem is not equally shared.
Track here, but I saw a tweet that broke this down, and I think it's important to put in here just so that you guys see the reality of it. I'm sure that you guys know because you're out there and you're facing it, but for the people who don't know, maybe you're already married, you're out of this world, just read this. According to the latest U.S. Census data, 1.42% of American women are aged 25 to 35, unmarried, and not obese. This is all races, religion, education, and income levels. And from that, 70% identify as liberal, 60% self-report as suffering from mental illness, 55% are on SSRIs, 12% identify as LGBT.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. They're all mentally ill. Is that men's fault? No, that's women's fault. Stop being mentally ill. Fix yourself. I'm sorry, fix yourself. This is the way men have to look at the world. I thought you want to be equal. Feminism, right? You want to be equal to men? Tell yourself what we tell ourselves. Go to the gym, fix yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. Oh, you don't like it when the world's brutal like that? We don't share responsibility equally.
Q+. That is depressing. And I promise, guys, I am out here trying to change that by doing this show. I'm speaking to young women, and I promise there are still good women out there. I know so many of them. I have so many single friends.
That's not the moral of the story, Brad. That's not the conclusion that we draw from all this evidence. Oh, there are still women out there. This is the same logical thinking, unfortunately, that we see on Fresh and Fit, where they bring out the delusional calculator and say, yeah, the type of man that you want, if we put these standards in terms of height, money, education level, background, etc. Yeah, your odds of finding this man are 0.0016%. Yeah, that's still like a couple thousand guys. That doesn't mean that it's probable. Just because there are still good women out there that have been raised in a good household where they respect their father and they're deluded by the feminist ideology doesn't mean that it is a viable option to continue along in this old path. I conclude now that this tradcon belief system is truly feminine. This tradcon belief system surrounding dating is truly feminine in its thinking due to the mental errors it commits. I understand that there are struggles and trials women face that I don't face, but that doesn't mean that they are not responsible for those trials and problems, solely responsible. In the same way, I am solely responsible for the trials and problems that I face that women will never face. I accept that. That is exactly what it should be. But we cannot shirk responsibility because it means you will never overcome those things. They will never be fixed. And providing excuses, saying that there are both sides when you read the definitive proof of women's like psychotic break from reality when they respond to someone like Charlie Kirk saying literal objective facts. Props to Charlie Kirk, by the way. Balls of steel, I respect you, bro. But that's just not a sufficient response on the part of Brett Cooper. And we see that same inability to identify the problem that she exhibited when she reacted to and unjustly demonized Fresh and Fit. Guys, subscribe to the channel. Over here, we believe a word of truth outweighs the world. And I mean that literally.